meditation actually does provide some immediate benefits, as well as everybody hears about the longer term benefits. But 3 minutes of just sitting quietly and breathing deeply and paying attention to breathing all the way in, all the way down to your abdomen and letting all of that air out and doing that for just 3 minutes, you will have immediate effects. Everything slows down, your nervous system, the cortisol that's coursing through your veins, everything will feel better. Like you will feel better by stopping for 3 minutes. I mean, come on, who doesn't have 3 minutes?
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today, Jeff is interviewing Lori Saitz. Lori is the founder and CEO of Zen Rabbit and host of the podcast Fine is a Four-Letter Word. An award-winning author, speaker, and broadcaster, Lori is on a mission to teach the world to be calm and grounded no matter what is going on. As a nationally recognized gratitude and meditation expert, Lori guides entrepreneurs and business leaders from stressed and chaotic to peaceful and focused, and shows them how to live a sabbatical life. Her clients have seen sales increase, relationships strengthened, and overall health improved. You can learn more about Lori at zenrabbit.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Lori.
Lori, welcome to the Corporate Couch.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm very excited, very excited. It looks like you possibly grew up in New Jersey, so I was one state over in New York.
Don't tell anyone, okay? I got out as soon as I could.
When people say, "Oh, yeah, you're from New Jersey, right?" I said, "No, I'm from New York." So I said, no,
I know, and New Yorkers are very they don't want to be known. Like, it's different.
Yeah.
No, New York.
Exactly. So, I'd like to start with a fun question to all my guests. In terms of, we've been on Zoom now in the pandemic for the last 3+ years. So what's the craziest attire you've seen on a professional Zoom call, or lack of attire, whatever the case may be?
You know, I haven't actually seen too much. I've spent a lot of time on Zoom. I was on Zoom way before pandemic. So that was not a new thing for me once pandemic showed up. But I don't think I can't remember a time when anybody's been like too crazy, other than, having an animal show up like this, a cat or a dog.
My 2-year-old ultra mini golden doodle. So he's
adorable.
Stage 5.
I don't know. I mean, most people I've been on calls with have been, even if not professionally dressed, at least dressed, like a t-shirt, maybe. Nobody showed up in curlers or pajamas.
Yeah, we've had people mention pajamas. We've had people mention guys showing up with no shirt, just a towel over them.
I wish I had a story. I don't know.
And actually, I just did another radio personality / voiceover talent locally based in Kansas City, and he said, "Yeah, I was in my underwear once for a Zoom call." So there you go. So those are kind of the top ones that come.
Yeah, if people were wearing something crazy, at least I didn't see it.
Right.
Maybe it was below the camera.
There you go. Yeah, I actually, when I started my podcast, I used to ask, so what are you wearing below the camera? And then a friend of mine goes, yeah, females may not want you to ask them that question, so I don't ask that question anymore.
I actually have on jeans today instead of just workout leggings.
All right, there you go. This is a corporate couch. Now we're going to get into a therapy session, but I always I think childhood helps us kind of figure out who we are. And so growing up, what did you love to do, Lori?
I loved to write and color, which I sometimes pull out a coloring book now, and we can get into talking about that too, because it's a form of meditation. But what did I love to do? Yeah, I mean, I was a lot of the stuff I still love doing, which is writing, playing around in the kitchen, like baking, making up recipes, or taking a recipe and totally modifying it.
Yeah,
and Barbies. I mean, come on, what girl at my age didn't love her Barbies? I mean, who's grown up in like the 70s and
exactly. I used to have a GI Joe doll, so there you go.
Yeah, so did my brother, and he became the boyfriend for the Barbie.
There you go. Ken was pissed, but what can you do? Just go to coloring for 1 second. When you colored as a kid, inside the lines, what was your coloring?
I was probably much more the inside the lines kind of kid.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was too. I like the color also. Interesting. So did you have aspirations? Every kids want to be the president. They want to be a teacher. They want to be whatever. What was your kind of dream?
Yeah, that was my aspiration, was to be a teacher, because there wasn't a whole lot that I saw. My mom had been a teacher before I was born. And so I just thought that would be a cool, fun thing to do. And the interesting thing about that is that I see myself as a teacher now, just in a different form, not standing in front of a classroom of kids.
Right.
And when I was really young, that's what I saw, and that's what I aspired to. As I got to be like a young teenager, and my stepfather was a kind of a mid-level executive for a very large insurance company, and he worked in the city. And so I kind of then thought, well, executive could be kind of cool, but I'm not. And because we had to take typing. Did you have to take typing in school?
Yeah, it was my lowest grade in
I hated it. And so I can type. I know how to do it. But I remember coming home from school like every day, and I was like, I am not going to need to know how to type. I'm going to have a secretary to do this for me.
Yeah, interesting. So then you go to American University, and you pick a major. It looked like communication. What was kind of the basis of that?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I have vague memories of this, but I was volunteering at a community television station, and I fell in love with being in the studio. Oh my gosh, I still love the feeling of being in a TV studio. So that was my major when I started college, was broadcast. And American University was my escape from New Jersey. I wanted to go to a school in a city. And my mom had given me the parameter of it needed to be 4 hours away or less, and by driving. And I, of course, said, well, that depends how fast you drive, doesn't it? So anyway, I came to the nation's capital, loved it. I still love this city so much, and started as a broadcast major. But a couple of years into school, I went into a radio studio with like a real radio studio, real station, not off campus. And the DJ said to me, yeah, that's great. Everybody needs to start somewhere. So typically you're going to start in working overnights in the middle of Iowa for $10 an hour. And I was like, not knowing any better, not knowing to ask more questions or to even explore if that was true. In my head, I went, oh, hell no, I am not leaving the nation's capital to go work in the middle of Iowa and do overnights. And I changed my major. I changed it to public communications, which was more like public relations. And that's what I graduated with.
Okay. Interesting.
But I never dropped my love for broadcast.
Yeah, I think we'll get into that a little later as we go through your career progression. So I also, researching for our conversation today, you're prominent on, whether it's your podcasts or your website, but you love weightlifting, and I heard that you started at 17. Like, what was the basis of that?
I have no idea because nobody in my family was an athlete. Nobody worked out at a gym. I do not know where that love came from, but shortly after I got my driver's license, the next thing I did was go sign up at back in the day when it was more popular. It was an all women's gym, and I just got into it.
Yeah, no, no role model, no
No,
somebody that you emulated, or you just said,
not that I
"I'm
can
gonna,
remember.
I'm
I
gonna
have
start
no
lifting
idea.
weights."
Yeah, I have no idea what drove that interest,
Yeah.
and it's been a lifelong something I've done. Yeah, for my whole life. And I would so much rather be in the weight room. There's the t-shirt I saw that says cardio. Oh, look, weights.
Yeah, I injured my I had a knee surgery, my first knee surgery when I in December when I was 17, and I turned 18 in January, and I started lifting weights then as part of my physical therapy. So after I finished my physical therapy with the therapist, he said you need to do it on your own. And the only place in my small hometown, I grew up in about an hour from New York City in Peekskill, New York. The only place that had a gym besides a high school was a huge gymnastics place, mainly female gymnasts at all ages. And then they had this other room that had weights, and I was just doing legs, but then I'm like, I might as well lift. And I basically have lifted every year of my life, since 18.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Like when you read about me, that I call the gym is my sanctuary.
Yeah, no, I
That's
love
where I
it.
can go and just don't talk to me. Like
Right.
just let me do my thing.
Yeah. I bet you no headphones. You just lift.
No, definitely headphones.
Definitely headphones. What do you listen
Yes.
to?
All kinds of stuff. Classic rock, strong
Okay.
women,
Okay.
mostly those two things. And sometimes some like current pop.
Okay. Great. I didn't know if you try to get into the meditative flow, because we'll talk
No,
about
no, I
meditation
gotta
too.
have music when I'm yeah.
R-
It just some people listen.
rock it
Actually, I
out.
don't no podcast. Yeah, I need my music
Yeah.
and I can get in the zone.
I love it. Love it. So you graduate there, and your first job, how did you secure your first job? I believe it was corporate communications.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my first job. So I had an internship my second semester, senior year. I had an internship at the craziest marketing communications agency. It was very small. The two principals and one person. She was more than an assistant, but she had just graduated, so she was a year older than me. We've stayed friends still to this day. So I got to do a lot of really cool things because it was such a small agency. But they couldn't, because it was so small, they couldn't keep me on after I graduated. But they helped me find my first job, and that was as the assistant executive director, the Ad Association of Metro Washington, or the Ad Association of Washington, D.C., something like that. And at the time, it was the late 80s, every advertising agency and marketing communications agency was a member. They had like 1,000 members of this association. So everybody, what I ultimately wanted was to be a copywriter. That's the job I was looking for. I sent out like 400 resumes. The guys at my internship helped me because they're so creative. They helped me create this amazing, super creative cover letter.
Nice.
And that looked like the front page of a newspaper.
Wow.
Super cool. But
it.
I didn't end up getting a job as a copywriter. That's not what came to me. But this opportunity to work for this association where I got to interact with everyone from every ad agency in town was amazing.
Yeah. And that's when the days used to get together for meetings, right?
Yes. Yeah. So much. I mean, regularly hundreds of people at every monthly meeting.
I love it. So 400, you had to actually mail them too. So that
yes, mail and like fold mail, and everything had to be laid out there wasn't desktop,
Right.
design. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about that.
Probably typewriter, well, possibly even too. And maybe
Yeah.
not
But the
later.
layout of that cover letter that
Yeah.
looked like the front page of a newspaper, like that had to
Right.
be done
Oh
manually.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow.
I still have a copy of that somewhere, I
Was
think.
it an 8 by 11?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Eight
That
and a
is
half by
cool.
11 sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. That would be phenomenal.
Yeah. Let me see if I can dig it out from somewhere. I'll send you a
Yeah.
copy.
So you kind of did a couple of different things in the communication PR realm, and then it looked like you got a sales job, possibly, business
No,
development.
I've never really worked in sales because after that, I went and worked in the PR department of a residential real estate company.
Right.
From there, I went to the marketing department of an international financial services company where we were buying and selling foreign currency. This was before the euro.
Okay.
Then my husband and I started moving around. My husband at the time to Pittsburgh, Sacramento. I worked for a marketing communications agency as an account manager, and I did some business development there.
Yeah.
That didn't feel so much like sales, but I was selling
Okay.
marketing, this agency services. And then we moved to South Florida, and that's about when I got my real opportunity to work in real radio.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like you were a radio personality in South Florida. Phenomenal. Like, so what did you decide? Like, I don't want to be like this PR communication guru, have my own secretary, typing my stuff up, that type thing.
I couldn't get a job
Yeah.
in South Florida. Like, I talked to so many people, and there were no marketing opportunities, or at least none that were being presented to me. And so I ended up going back to school for broadcast at like a local. Yeah, it was a place that it was kind of like a trade school for broadcast. And so I made some connections there, and I got into being able to do some on-air radio, funny, overnights for $10 an hour, but in South Florida instead of Iowa. So
There you go. Little different.
it was a little different. And I did get to do some stuff that wasn't overnights, but that was rough. Working overnights is rough.
So what was your surprise, your biggest surprise doing that for a living that you had no preconceived notion about? Because I think you worked in your college radio station, you said, but
Yeah, I did work my college radio station all 4 years, even though I changed my major. That could have been a clue. But I just love that. I love being able to have a microphone, but it's not just to hear my own voice. It's to connect with people. The power of connection through broadcast is pretty amazing.
yeah, I think we were talking before we went on air. I interviewed a local, he was a famous radio personality in Kansas City, top rated morning show. Dan and Darcy, Dan Hurst is his name, but he talks about the power radio, and he got let go because of all the corporate buyouts, and he goes, now it's just people playing, let's see, I do 20 songs in a row. There's no interaction, there's no community building, there's no relationship building, and he saw the demise of that coming. So interesting.
Yeah. I bet he would agree with me. So to answer your question, what surprised me is how much work goes into putting together what you hear on the radio back in the day, especially like at morning shows. They don't just come in and turn on the mic and go. There's a ton of prep that goes into that.
Yeah, because it's a long time before hours.
Yeah.
You need content. You can't just think about it on the fly. Then you work a couple different radio stations, it looked like, and then you found your own company.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Because I couldn't keep working the overnights, and the hours were crazy. I ended up getting pneumonia, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so, I started my own business based on a family recipe. So the first business was called Zen Rabbit Baking Company, and the product eventually became known as the Gratitude Cookie. So, because I had a background in marketing and corporate communications, it wasn't my idea to just become the next Mrs. Fields. I created this as a product, as a way for businesses to say thank you to their clients and their referral sources. And that's what I did. I customized these packages. I shipped them all over the world, ran that business for 11 years, couldn't scale it the way I would have liked, and ended up shutting it down.
Wow. So it was self-funded then? You funded everything?
Yes, it was self-funded by myself and all the credit cards I could get.
Right. Just because you didn't want to work the late night, but some people would go back to what they knew and be the director of corporate communication or VP of PR or whatever. But you decided, hey, I want to run my own business. Like, what was the thought process behind that?
Again, it was I can't get a job in South Florida. Like they don't. Maybe it's changed, but the feeling I got, South Florida is a weird place. Okay, let me just say. Having lived there, anybody who's listening and who has lived in South Florida knows what I am talking about. But it is weird. People get there and they may have been very responsible and businesslike when they lived in New York, but they get down there and they aren't. Like, it's like this very weird world. But marketing wasn't really respected. Like, a lot of companies and organizations, they may have had a marketing department because somebody told them they had to, but they didn't really know how to do marketing, and they weren't serious about it. At least that was my experience. And so I couldn't get a job.
Yeah, I love it.
So I said, hey, I'm going to just do my own thing then.
And what family member's recipe did you use to start the company?
I can't tell you that.
Okay.
It's actually a family friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then why the name Zen Rabbit?
So again, as a marketer, you want to find a name that's going to be memorable.
Right.
And that's one thing, I'm really good at branding. I'll wave my flag and ego for that one. But yeah, so what happened was, when I would give these cookies to people and they would taste them, they would immediately get this reminiscent, they'd go to this place where they would think about baking in the kitchen with grandma. And that was like their Zen blissful place. And so I thought, hey, that's kind of like when I was a baby, my mom bought me a stuffed rabbit. And as I got a little bit older, I would rub her ears for comfort, like kids do. They have blankies or animals or whatever. And so I had this rabbit, and there are pictures. There's a picture on my website on the About page, I think it is, of me with the rabbit. And you can see I'm like in this Zen blissful place. That's what she did for me. And that was kind of what these cookies were doing for people when they would eat them. It was like taking them to this Zen blissful place. And so, hey, why don't I call the company Zen Rabbit? It's a really memorable name.
Yeah, love it. Love it. And and we'll get more into what you're doing now, but because I know a lot of it is about gratitude. But what gave you the idea back then of the gratitude cookie? I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie The Secret?
Yes.
Okay. So in that movie, there's the gratitude rock. Mm-hmm. And about this same time that the movie came out and that I was starting the business, that was about the same time, 2003. I was part of a mastermind group, and I don't remember, we had all watched the movie together, but we also were reading, I don't know if it was Think and Grow Rich or The Science of Getting Rich, or one of because we read all of those together as a group, and then we'd go through and analyze it. So we were sitting around one time talking about, as somebody was like, we would share challenges with each other as well. And it wasn't just a book study group. And somebody came up with and said, hey, you know what? These are like gratitude cookies, like the gratitude rock. These are gratitude cookies. And I'm like, bingo, that's what they are. So, sometimes the best ideas do not come from yourself. That's why you need to get around other people and be in peer strategy groups or situations.
Yeah, so you talked about not being able to scale it like you really wanted to, but you had some success. I saw your Zen Crunch product was on the Rachel Ray show. Yeah. What would you have done differently in knowing what you know now? And obviously you're in a place where you should be, but
Yeah. I would have chosen one or two particular niches, but it took me a really long time to figure out which industries were my best customers. And it was financial services and commercial insurance, because they have a lifetime, the lifetime value of a client is pretty high in those industries. And so it behooves them to keep their clients happy so that they stay with them. They also have some restrictions around how much they can spend. And the cookies fit on both of those terms. But it took me a really long time to figure that out. And I would have specialized and gone after those industries much harder. But I was all over the place. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do wholesale. I really wanted to sell to Starbucks, but I didn't have, the cookies were really labor intensive. So they cost a lot to produce. And I didn't have a wholesale price. Like I couldn't get my price low enough to be able to sell it to a company so that they could double or quadruple the price to sell it at retail. So I distracted myself a lot with all of these other shiny object things instead of staying focused on what I really should have been doing, which was niching and going direct to people in those industries and maybe speaking at conference events in those industries and really using direct mail better. I love direct mail still to this day.
So, I mean, how did you learn obviously you had the marketing expertise and the relationship building, you knew all that, but like learning production of, how to, the cookie part of it, what was your process there?
Trial and error. I mean, I started out rolling out these cookies. So these cookies are rolled out really thin. And so I was in renting space I ended up in a church kitchen, rolling out these cookies on Mondays myself, rolling them out, baking them, packaging them. Eventually I ended up getting somebody to come help me, the wife of somebody I met through the chamber. And so then I had an assistant, but then then I got a tabletop machine that would roll them out, but we still had to cut them manually. And eventually I got big enough that I ended up leasing a piece of equipment that automated all of that and put it in a commercial bakery space and had somebody running that for me, and went through 3 commercial bakers because just things happened that forced me to have to find new people. And you mentioned the Zen Crunch. That second baker was the one who had a distributor that showed her some product, and she came up with that product for me.
Oh, really?
And it was beautiful. I mean, that stuff was like crack. I don't even know. I don't have the recipe for it. So even if I wanted to reproduce it, I couldn't. But oh my gosh, that stuff was amazing.
Interesting.
It was probably mostly sugar, but it was delicious.
Yeah.
Sugar and some nuts. And yeah.
And how did it get on Rachel Ray? How did that happen?
One of my friends who I worked with when I lived in Sacramento, and we worked together at this marketing communication agency, I hired her to do my PR. And she managed to pull that off. Now, you would think, being on the Rachel Ray show, yes, it sounds very impressive, and there's lots of credibility that comes with that.
Right.
But the end result was a lot of people emailing me asking if they could get a discount if they bought 4 bags because that was bulk to them.
Right.
And stories like, I have a very large family and we don't make very much money. Can you send me some coupons? That's what I got out of being a Rachel Ray.
So it wasn't like being on Oprah or having
No, it wasn't.
Review your book or read
it. It did not have the Oprah effect. No,
the Oprah effect was not there.
No, sadly, because I was open for that.
Yeah. So before you closed down the baking company, did you have your idea for your next business that you're currently doing? What was kind of...
No, I didn't at all. And the reason I ended up closing that, so there was a lot of shame and I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It was really difficult to close that business because that was my identity. Like, I know I've talked to a lot of people, you've probably talked to a lot of people, when you leave a position or a company, whether it's your own company or not, and you've been doing that for so many years, that's who you are.
Right.
And you leave and now you're like, well, what do I do now? Who am I?
Right.
What happens now? I had no idea. I was in the process of closing that business when my mom was diagnosed with an acute form of leukemia, and she passed away 6 weeks later. So it was in some ways good timing, because then I didn't have the business needing my attention, that I could focus my attention on those last weeks with her, and then with all of the stuff that had to be done afterwards with the estate and everything. And just having that time to kind of process through. But it was a lot of time to process through the death of my business and my mom at the same time.
Wow. Yeah, the grieving, I can't even imagine what that looked like. Yeah, so what did what did you do next? Like how did you process all that? How did you process the grieving and
Well, yeah, I mean, that was actually when I started to get more into meditation. So the interesting thing was, I was actually introduced to meditation when I was 10 years old. My mom took my brother and me to a meditation course that's now known as the Silva method. And so we were introduced to it, but then I didn't practice it for like the next 35 years, because why would I? But maybe because I just wasn't. Maybe that first business would have looked a lot different if I had. But I turned to meditation to kind of help me stay calm and grounded and balanced and manage through that time. I ended up taking a consulting position in marketing for a couple of years, because I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I had a lot of debt to pay off from that business. So yeah, I was the director of marketing for a real estate company. Although I didn't let them hire me as an employee, because from a mind space standpoint, I did not want to be an employee.
Right.
So it was important for me to maintain my consultant status.
Yeah. Just to go back to your meditation at 10, like was your mom like very like to bring a 10-year-old to a meditation class?
Yeah.
Like my my stepmom raised me basically, but she was from, she didn't immigrate to the United States from Italy until I think she was 26 years old. So like I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
So was she into it? I mean, did she obviously do it, or she wanted to learn?
Yeah. Somehow I don't know how she was introduced to the course, but she took the course with a couple of friends. And then she came back and took my brother. My brother was 8 and I was 10. And she put us in the kids course with her friend. They were our neighbors across the street with their kids. And then there were some other random kids in the class too. But it was 2 full weekends. And yeah, we learned so much. So I always had that as a foundation and as a base, even though I wasn't practicing it, but it was there. And then she also made my dad take the class. That's probably the best way to describe it. She made him like, he didn't believe in that stuff, and like believe in meditation. It's like believing in gravity. Like it's a thing, whether you believe it or not. Right. But he was not into it, but he went through it anyway. No surprise they divorced a few years later, not because of that, but just their beliefs were so different.
Damn meditation class. Damn it. Right? Why'd you bring me there?
Right. No. But yeah, it was, so I guess, yeah, she was fairly progressive, especially when she was younger.
Yeah. So you do this marketing consultancy, and then you come up with an idea for your business. What was that? How that happened?
Yeah. Their need for me to be their director of marketing was kind of phasing out. And so then at the same time, I was kind of getting the itch to get back into running my own thing again. And I came to the idea of teaching networking strategies, because I had to learn that when I started the baking company. I had to learn, how do you go to a chamber meeting or a conference and walk into a room full of people where you don't know anybody, and being what I call a quiet person. I was super shy as a kid. And I learned, I grew out of that more as I got older, but still can be very intimidating for me to walk into a space where I don't know anybody and break into a conversation or start a conversation with somebody I don't know. How do you do that? And so I had to learn how to do that. And so I thought, well, let me go back to that. I'm actually pretty good at making connections with people and maintaining relationships. So I started putting together a course on that. And I wrote an ebook called How to Be Comfortable, Confident, and Courageous at Networking Events. And so I was starting to teach that, going into companies and teaching workshops, and then pandemic, and nobody was going anywhere.
Right.
And now what? Now I need to pivot again.
So I do I love connecting with people. So I'm a big relationship builder, connector, go giver. I really enjoy it. But it mainly in one-on-one settings. I mean, and a lot of people, it's like sales. Sometimes people think of sales as somebody forcing you to do something. They think of car salesman or timeshare would be the worst example.
Yeah.
Probably. They don't care about the relationship. And I just think networking events themselves, I'd love your opinion about it, but like it's harder. Like it's usually for me, I get introduced by a friend or, how it works, and they want to meet with me. And I always take those meetings, but a networking event is kind of a blind, right? You're just walking up to somebody. And sometimes people think it's, tit for tat type thing. But I would love your kind of viewpoint on networking events and kind of the power of the relationship.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. You're building a relationship. That's where people get hung up and come out of it not liking networking events because they think it's a pitch fest. And it is in no way, shouldn't be a pitch fest. It's starting a relationship. You're just having a conversation. You don't know what's going to come out of it. Maybe they become a client down the road. Maybe they send you referrals and they become a referral partner. Maybe you just met your new best friend. Who knows? But go into it with the attitude of, I'm going to have some cool conversations and see what happens. And go into it with the attitude of, let me find out about these other people. Like what makes, like being curious about who they are, not just what they do. I absolutely detest the question, what do you do? Which is what we are all trained to ask at networking events.
Right.
And it is absolutely the worst question you can possibly start a conversation with. Like everybody who's listening to this right now, do not ever ask that question. Do yourself a favor. Don't ask that question.
What's your favorite networking event opening question?
What are you excited about working on right now?
There you go. Love it.
Because that opens the door to letting the person interpret that question however they want. First of all, they are thrilled that you're not asking them, what do you do? You're asking them a question that they can really dig into and enjoy answering. Right. And people could be at networking events for all kinds of reasons. Maybe they're between jobs or whatever it is. Asking that question gives them the opportunity to tell you how much they're enjoying coaching their daughter's softball team, right, or whatever. It doesn't have to be work related, right, or it could be, but it tells you something about who they are because they're getting excited about telling you what they're excited about.
So I love that question. I think that's a great tip for our listeners out there. And so you're doing this networking thing. You're introverted, and I saw a quote somewhere where a teacher said, you need to speak up more. You're a great student, you need to speak up more in class. And you said, you're comfortable around friends and family members, and you could be yourself. But I was 100% the same way, 100%. Till I went to college, I think I got out of my, but I even remember my first professional job. My second manager said we had some big wig. I worked for AT&T when there's 1 million employees, so it was big. Mm-hmm. And I didn't ask any questions during this Q&A with a top executive. My manager said, Jeff, people think you have very high potential, but you have to ask questions. You need to get out of your comfort zone, and I saw in your the chapter of the book, The Love Warrior. So I read it, and it was very good. But the person I would write the letter to is Nancy Sadler. I'm going to find her because she gave me that advice, and I never thanked her, but I've mentioned it several times. But I'm going to try to find her because I don't think she's on LinkedIn or anything. But I am going to take your advice from that.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that you just made my day. I'm
yeah,
so happy you read that and you're going to
yeah,
do that exercise.
yeah. No, I thought it was fantastic. So. Yeah, so you doing this networking, consulting, helping people, especially introverts, with the networking events and doing better there. And then but now you're basically a stress eradication expert.
Yeah,
So you
you know,
bundle
until
every.
I
Yeah,
come up with a better term
yeah, it's all right.
than stress eradication expert. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, really, I'm on a mission now to teach the world to be calm and grounded no matter what's going on around them.
right. Yeah.
And then, so during pandemic, I came back around to talking about gratitude because when I had the baking company, I was talking a lot about using gratitude as a differentiating factor in business. And then it kind of expanded out to talking about how to use gratitude to create success and be a more successful person and create success in your life overall. And so once pandemic came around and I got back into it. In fact, just today, I saw as a memory on Facebook that I was putting out, hey, I'm going to run a 5-day gratitude experience. This was in June. Well, yeah, we're coming up into June of 2020. And I ran a 5-day gratitude experience to help people feel and find more gratitude in their lives. Cause you know, that was a pretty challenging time.
Yeah, 100%. Was that live or virtual?
It was live. I was doing Facebook lives.
Okay.
It was live and it had some email components to it with
Okay.
exercises and stuff for people to do every day.
Yeah, I actually meant face to face, but obviously it makes sense. June 2020, things were not.
Yeah. Nobody was going anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, phenomenal. Yeah, it's interesting because I love the meditation, and I got into it about 5 or 6 years ago. I'm a big Tim Ferriss guy. You know, read the 4 Hour Work Week way back when, and started listening to
Yeah.
this podcast early on. And I think you said it somewhere, whether it's your bio, your about section, or your LinkedIn profile, about how all these high powered people meditate, and athletes, business people, the actors, everything in between. And Tim Ferriss, would say 80% of my guests meditate. And I'm thinking, well, if Anthony Robbins and Peter Attia and all these great people that have done phenomenal things meditate, I'm like, it's probably good for me. And I think it's especially important, and your viewpoint would be even more enlightening than mine, I'm sure. But it's just everything's instant gratification and getting notifications, and it just the power of the mind. You just can't you can't keep up with it, so you have to. And it's crazy. I don't golf that much, but when I started meditating, my golf game became better with everything being equal in terms of the amount of effort I put into it and practice, and not playing maybe 5-6 times a year. But I think golf is all about the mind. It's you against you versus sports. You've got people coming after you, 100-mile-per-hour fastballs, whatever. But I would love your take on, meditation, especially in today's world with, everything, everything's always on.
Everything is always on, and we are constantly being pulled in a million different directions. And there are so many distractions that we rarely allow ourselves the time to settle and to hear our own inner voice and to breathe, like to really breathe. I mean, obviously we're breathing because we're still alive, but to really breathe deeply, to oxygenate your body and your brain. And you talked about immediate benefits. So meditation actually does provide some immediate benefits, as well as everybody hears about the longer term benefits. But the immediate of doing 3 minutes of just sitting quietly and breathing deeply and paying attention to breathing all the way in, all the way down to your abdomen and letting all of that air out and doing that for just 3 minutes, you will have immediate effects in terms of just everything slows down, your nervous system, your the cortisol that's coursing through your veins, everything will feel better. Like, you will feel better by stopping for 3 minutes. I mean, come on, who doesn't have 3 minutes?
Right.
Try this for 3 minutes. If you can't sit, this is another thing I talk about all the time, about all the myths and misconceptions around what meditation is. And people think they have to sit for an hour in complete silence with no thoughts in their head and, cross-legged on a mat. And that's a form of meditation, I guess, but most people can't do that. And so they think they're not good at it. But there are so many other ways to do it and so many benefits to doing it. You mentioned how all of these high top performing business leaders and athletes, and they all do it not because they have nothing else to do. There are, and back in the day, I think when I first learned to meditate, people kind of looked at it as like a woo-woo thing.
Yeah.
And there's so much science and research behind how it affects your physical health, your mental health, your focus, your creativity, your emotional intelligence, your relationships, whether it's at work or at home, your ability to sleep. It affects your sleep. Like, people who meditate sleep better. All of these things. And but coming back to what I think is one of the most important pieces of all of this is that space to allow yourself to hear your own inner voice. Because everybody's trying to tell you who they think you should be and what you should do. Never mind, they can't run their own lives, but they're going to tell you how to do yours, right?
Right.
But what is your inner voice saying? Because only you can hear it, but you have to slow down enough to tap into it.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. So you basically take the name from the baking company and make your own consulting firm. So what, Zen Rabbit, and so you're on the this mission to quiet people's minds. But so who are your main people do you help? Do you work with individuals? Do you work with companies?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So high achievers who feel like they are never accomplished enough. And I know what that feels like because I am one. And that means that you work 15 or 18 hours a day and you go to bed and you feel like you still haven't done anything. You haven't accomplished enough. There's still so much more to do. And we have been trained since birth to believe that hard work is the key to success. That's how you become successful. Just keep working. Just keep nose to the grindstone. Keep working, keep working. And if you're not productive, you don't have value. And if you haven't accomplished something, it's like, what have you done for me lately? Everything. We think that if we take any time to stop and relax and recharge, that like the world's going to fall apart or something. And we can't allow that. And I'm not anywhere near where I'd like to be in terms of my goal. So I better keep working.
Right.
But that's the big fat freaking lie, is that all of this hard work, 24/7 hustle is what's going to get you to success. It can, but at what cost?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I had 2 back-to-back hard jobs. One right before the pandemic. It was about a 5.5-year run with this late-stage startup that got bought out. And then I went to United Way of Greater Kansas City, and right before the pandemic and during the pandemic. So just making a long story really short, right after I left United Way, because they let go about 20% of their full-time because of the pandemic, I got into all these things about, I need to be productive, like all these productivity hacks. And I love Ryan Holiday's quote, we're human beings, not human doings.
Right.
I was just caught up with, I got to figure out what's next. I don't have a job now, like all these things. But I mean, I needed a break. It was the
Yeah.
bottom line. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So you'll work with individuals or corporate executives. Like, what is the kind of
Yeah.
deal?
I prefer working with small groups. So I'll do one-to-one private coaching, if you will, but I much prefer to do a small group because everyone benefits more from the interaction of everybody else
Right.
and from learning not just from me, but from each other and
Right.
having the ability to interact and exchange ideas in that way. So smaller group programs, as well as coming into organizations and doing workshops for them as well.
Okay. Now, when you
Because
say small teams, like, is that a leadership team? So like a peer group, or is that
it could
just,
be, it could be
or,
when I've done the small groups outside of organizations, it's been entrepreneurs primarily who come together. Well, yeah, not just on, I've had some employees, but they've joined as individuals into the small group
I see.
program that I've done outside of organizations.
Okay.
So it's just a mishmash of like whoever shows up that month, you know?
I see.
No, I mean, they sign up for the program. It's not
Right.
like random show up, but
And what's the program consist of? Like, is it every month or X number of months, or what does it look
yeah, it's an 8-week program that is, so it's called, well, I don't know what the rating on your show is. I'll say
like? Oh,
it's
it's
called,
explicit if you go,
okay.
F
All right. So the
bombs,
show,
anything.
the program's called Fuck Being Fine because we reach this place where we go around saying everything's fine when
Right.
it is not fine at all.
Yeah.
And you finally reach a point, usually in your 40s or 50s, where you're like, fine is not okay. I can't do this anymore. Fuck it. This is so
Right.
fuck being fine. Under that program, the framework is called the Trilogy for Success. And the trilogy is gratitude, connections, and those connections are with everybody, family, friends, colleagues, but most importantly, as we talked about, yourself. And the third piece is courage, because you're going to get some messages once you start tapping into your own inner voice that you're going to think, I can't do that. And you have to find the courage to listen to your own inner voice. Your intuition will not steer you wrong, but it's going to take courage sometimes to listen to it.
Yeah, I love it. Love it.
So it's an 8-week program, an hour, depending on how many people are in the program, an hour to 90 minutes a week. And participants in the past have said to me that that is the highlight of their week.
Yeah, that's great. And it's Zoom, I assume, right? Or
It is
some kind of
Zoom.
virtual-
It
yeah.
is Zoom. But going into organizations, I would so much rather do it in person
Right.
because the energy exchange is so, this is why I love this, going back to why I love having a microphone, being on a stage or in front of, it doesn't have to be on a stage, but in front of a room, leading a workshop, the energy exchange is so incredible. I love that.
Right.
And so that's what I love. Like,
Yeah.
this is my way of teaching now.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so I'd like to help usually two groups of that I'm very empathetic towards. One is recent college graduates. So, what advice, Lori, would you give a recent college graduate in terms of their career and how to navigate that first job and then the early years? What advice would you impart on them?
2 things. 1, start building your network. Your network is your most important business asset. They can take away everything from you, they being whoever. But if you have a strong network, you can recoup everything. And that's not just in a business sense, in your life. Like, have a good mechanic, have a good doctor, but start building your network now. Not when you get let go from your first job or your next job and you don't have a network to draw on. Start building your network now. And by the way, I revised and re-released just a few months ago that book, that ebook.
Okay.
So that's available on my website. So go get the book.
Yeah,
and,
I'll put the link
and
in
learn
the-
how to network effectively. So
Yeah.
that's number 1.
Yeah.
And number 2 is find a way, whether it's meditation or whatever it is that you can, that whatever way you can find to keep yourself calm and grounded, again, no matter what's going on around you. Because when you can learn how to respond instead of react, you are so much more powerful.
Right. Yeah. A book I read in God, it was probably my around 30, 31. It was Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. And,
Yeah.
if you can't read that book and think about, well, geez, this guy controlled his mind in the most extenuating circumstances that, humans have ever faced. I gave it out several times to my team members when they got stressed about, I said, look, read this, and then work is just work, like you
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of books, I would also highly recommend Think and Grow Rich for any new graduate.
Classic. Okay.
Yeah. It is a classic, and so many people
Yeah.
don't know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. So the second group is when and then you're a few years into your professional career, you get that promotion. So now, from an HR perspective, you have people reporting to you. So what leadership advice do you have for these first time managers that now have people reporting to them that kind of help their leadership journey?
Yeah, pretty much the same advice.
There you go.
Build your network, but now you're building your network below you as well. So it's not always just networking up. Having, building that network and teaching your team how to network, and teaching your team how to, encouraging your team to get into personal and professional development. Like, education is a lifelong thing. So no matter what your position is, to always be learning. But then when you become the leader, to encourage your team members to always continue learning. And who was it that said something about you can teach, this is totally paraphrased, that you encouraging your people to continually learn. And if they end up leaving you, then that's okay. But if they're not learning and they stay, that's worse. Like, they're
right.
Just,
yeah. No,
I totally
I've heard that quote.
but,
Yeah, totally right. Totally right. Well, and it's important because, and you have to do it, right? So you can't just tell them, hey, you need to do professional development, and I taught a class at the University of Kansas in the business school on Salesforce leadership. But I said, look, those of you that are seniors, you're going to graduate, but your learning just begins. Like, what you learned in here, it's minute compared to, you're going to have to learn for the rest of your life to continue to grow. So,
yeah. And so encouraging your team members to do the same. I've had amazing mentors in my life, and one of them in particular always comes to mind, and he would share books with me. And not even necessarily just business books. Like, he introduced me to the Celestine Prophecy.
Oh, wow.
Books that just would expand who you are.
Right.
To become a better person. That's really what I think we all would do well to strive to become. When you become a better person, you become a better leader, you become a better business person.
Yeah.
Just all around.
Yeah.
And to act in collaboration instead of competition.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And and really, they're not, you need to, my philosophy, and I think a lot of leaders too, it's like you're in it together. You're lead, alongside people, not definitely not from behind, but you have to set strategies and set the vision, but you're part of a team trying to do great things. So
yeah.
Well, Laura, you've been phenomenal. We talked before we got on about the word fine, so I love that you have a podcast. Fine is a 4-letter word, and the program Fuck Fine. So that's anybody that does that is definitely a friend of mine. So thank you again for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. And I invite your listeners to come visit at zenrabbit.com, where they can find that networking book. And if somebody wants to download a free 6-minute gratitude meditation, they can find that there as well.
Yeah, phenomenal. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
My pleasure, Jeff.
I just thought Lori was a great guest. A lot of key learnings. Rachel Ray doesn't have the Oprah effect. So if you get your cookie product, Zen Crunch on Rachel Ray, all you get is emails from consumers asking for a discount.
Not the same thing, is it? Doggone it.
So, but yeah, I just very funny. She has her own podcast. Her training course is "Fuck Being Fine" is the name of it. And it's funny, I was introduced to her by Tabitha Scott, who was guest episode number 4 on our podcast. And it was so funny when I was doing research on Lori, and I found out, the fuck being fine and this, fine is not good. It's so funny because I have said that for years. If I ask somebody, how you doing? They say fine. I'm like, I got to probe a little bit because usually it's not good. Fine is not good.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah. So it's interesting. Now, I'm just going to guess, and she wrote a networking book for essentially introverts, and you're one of the biggest introverts I know. You're probably going to give your wisdom or insight on that piece.
Yeah, I actually wear that, a sense of pride as my introversion. And so I wanted to talk about that. She talked about how to make conversation a networking event. And obviously that is not my strong suit. That's not something that I am especially proud of being able to manage. And she referred to the fact, the tendency that a lot of people have of saying the first thing, what do you do for a living? And she challenged that and said that what you do for a living isn't the best opening line. A much better opening line is, what are you doing that you're excited about? And I think that's genius. That's absolutely genius, because on the one hand, if the person is excited about what they do for a living, then it accomplishes the same thing. So it's no harm, no foul. But it opens up the best possible conversation to that person, because what do people want to talk about other than what they're excited about? I mean, that's what you just invited them to the one very thing that they most want to talk about, when you didn't even know what it was that they wanted to talk about, and it can go in all sorts of different directions after that. So I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I did too. I noted that, and I figured you would comment on it. So
yeah.
that introverted and that predictable. Yep. What leadership advice do you have for our listeners today, Joe?
Well, today we're going to get a little bit of introspection, if you will, from that great philosopher Andy Bernard, who once said, "I wish there was a way to know that you're in the good days before you've actually left them."
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.